Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Hallmark series, our national webinar series. Before we begin, I'd like to give you talk to you about some housekeeping rules. I request you all to use headphones for enhanced audio qualities. And if you have switched on your video, I would request you to you may want to switch it off in case you have bandwidth issues. Um, and as we progress through the session, you might have a few questions. So please feel free to put that in the chat box, or if you are watching it live from Facebook, you can post your questions in the comment section, and we'll be happy to answer all those questions towards the end of the session. And we will also be posting a few resources, a few links that will be posted in the chat box, as well as you will also find it in the comment section of the Facebook Live. Please feel free to access those towards the end of the session. Thank you so much. And our Hallmarks of US Higher Education series started on June 9th, and it will go up till July 21st. It's a national webinar series, and in that we have these following session talking about research opportunities for undergraduate students in the United States. And you can also find the previous series, previous webinars available in either on Facebook, or you can access it towards the end of this week on YouTube as well. Okay, before I talk about US, undergraduate research opportunities for undergraduate students in the United States, let me give you a brief overview about Education USA, just to tell you who we are and what do we do. Education USA is your official source on US higher education, and we are supported by US Department of State. Our mandate is to provide accurate, current, and comprehensive information, and most importantly, unbiased information. And today we also, because when I talk about unbiased information, we also represent 4,700 accredited higher education institutions in the United States. Our centers across the globe are about 430 plus centers in 170 plus countries. In India, we are located in 7 cities, and we have about 8 centers, and we are hosted by 4 host organizations. The center in Ahmedabad is hosted by Indo-American Education Society. The one in Bangalore is hosted by Yashna Trust, and the center in Chennai, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Mumbai, and New Delhi are hosted by United States India Educational Foundation, which is also known as USIEF, or Fulbright Commission in India. And there is one more center in Hyderabad that is hosted by Y-Axis Foundation. To help you with your application process, Education USA has organized these 5 steps that you see in front of your screen. These steps will give you a fair understanding of what is there in the whole application process, and how you will be able to follow the process timely and in a structured manner. To give you a fair understanding, step 1 is to research your options, where you will be able to explore a variety of options available, variety of programs available in the United States, and you will be able to find the right fit for you. And step 2 is to finance your studies, where if you need funding, you will be able to explore a lot of funding opportunities that are available at US universities and other organizations. Complete your application is step 3, where you can plan ahead and identify what are the documents that are required for you to apply to the universities, and start working on those documents in a timely manner. Step 4 is to apply for student visas. This step will help you understand what are this actually will help prioritize everything, and you will be able to plan your visa application process in time. Step 5 is to prepare for your departure, where you get organized and ensure that you gather all the documents and learn about the immigration compliance. Now, how Education USA help you with all these 5 steps is through our services. These are a variety of services that we offer. Because of the pandemic, we have gone completely virtual since last year, and you can sign yourself up to get these Education USA updates. We keep doing various sessions like we are doing today. So you can sign yourself up. It's a free sign up, and you will start receiving updates from us. You will also receive updates around, the campus related updates like scholarship updates, like application deadline updates. So we keep sending these to the students that are there in our database. Uh, like the session that you are attending today, we also have a plethora of events that we do, and you can find our upcoming events on our calendar. I will be posting these two links in the website, in the comment section soon. And if you have any questions regarding US higher education, you can call us on our national toll-free line, which is 1-800-103-1231. Take a screenshot of this, and this is available from Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. We keep doing daily virtual Ask an Advisor sessions on the 5 steps to US study that we just talked about. You will get some fair understanding of how Education USA helps you through these 5 steps. This session will tell you about the detailed understanding of, will give you some detail, or will orient you with the 5 steps in detail. So you can get more understanding of these 5 steps through those sessions. Like today's session, we also do free virtual specialized session on admission and application process with US university reps and with testing agencies. And you'll also see us do various sessions with currently enrolled students and student alumni as well. We also offer individual advising membership at our centers. So you can get in touch with us if you are looking for what individual advising memberships. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. We keep posting updated content on about US higher education. You can find us through Education USA India. Just type in Education USA India and our name will pop up. We also have Education USA India mobile app that you can make use of. Like I said, we are the official source of US higher education. You can find first-hand information through this app, and it is available on App Store as well as on Play Store. So why wait? Just download it. It's just a tap away. And for 24/7 advising, if you're looking at 24/7 advising, our YouTube channel is a great repository of all our webinars that you can find. This is how it looks like, and we have various playlists for to serve every need. So you can certainly check our YouTube channel out and see if you are planning on kickstarting your application process. This is a great way to start. All this is free. You can access all this at ease of your home, wherever you are sitting. So you can certainly access it. Okay, with that, I would like you to meet our speakers today, who will be talking you through about undergraduate research opportunities that are available in the United States. So today we have with us Ford Tony from Johns Hopkins University. Ford has been a member of the Johns Hopkins International Admissions Team and committee for the last 5 years. While his primary international territory is Canada, he works very closely with his rest of the team to support students from all over the world. Ford works closely with Jenny Hunkin, his colleague who oversees India as part of her international territory. And we thank Jenny for helping us for introducing us with Ford. Domestically, Ford also works with students from the Pacific Northwest. Ford studied at the University of Mary Washington for his undergraduate program and is currently finishing his master's at Johns Hopkins. Welcome, Ford. And we also have Katie Dunnigan today from University of Wisconsin-Madison. Katie has worked in undergraduate international admissions at UW-Madison since 2010. Leading a team of 5 counselors, Katie has evaluated applications from all over the world and has experience with a variety of international curricula. She made 3 trips to India from 2018 till 2019, including a special trip with other Big Ten universities. Her current territories include Western Europe and Florida in the US. Katie has a bachelor's in French and Communication from the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point and Masters of Art in American Studies from University of Alabama. Thank you, Katie. We welcome Ford and Katie, both of you, and we are very grateful for you to talk us through the undergraduate research opportunities in the United States. And without a further ado, I will be handing it over to Ford, who will talk us through about overview and the importance of undergraduate research. Over to you, Ford.
Thank you. And again, I'm happy to be here to talk about research at the undergraduate level. So kind of the first question really is, what is research, for anybody who's maybe still not quite sure? At its core, research is just the pursuit of new knowledge. So this can happen in a traditional lab setting where maybe you are researching cells, or you're researching treatments for diseases, or you're doing research in technology to discover a new way to solve a problem. What's important to know is that research is not limited to the STEM fields, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Research can occur in various different academic fields or disciplines. At many universities, students can engage in research in that traditional lab setting that I just mentioned, but students could also do research into history, could do research into writing or literature. They can do research into archaeology or psychology, things that maybe don't fall in a traditional research definition, especially at the undergraduate university and college level. It's important to understand that research can take many different forms. It can also happen with many different types of people. You could be doing research independently, so just yourself. Students can also do research with other students, maybe at the undergraduate level, or a mix of graduate students and undergraduate students. Students could also do research with professors, or a combination of all of the above. There really are a lot of options. There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to pursuing research at the undergraduate level. Research is also important when you are a college university student for a number of reasons. It builds a lot of important skills. They're going to be useful in your post kind of undergraduate paths. If you are going directly from your bachelor's program to get a job or work in a different field, companies are seeking to fill positions with individuals who can apply their knowledge in a really direct way. They have had experience doing research, who can demonstrate they can think critically, as well as collaborate with others. Research teaches you all of those things. Graduate and professional schools, very similarly, are also seeking students who can build upon their knowledge. If a student can point back and point to research they've done or hands-on experiences, that makes them more competitive in those different fields. And they're also looking for students who can, who have experience and can continue to push the boundaries of a classroom education. Research generally occurs, outside of the classroom, and students are encouraged to not just be limited to what they've learned in the classroom, to find something new, to work with students or people from other different academic realms. And companies, graduate schools are looking for students who have been able to demonstrate that and have really great skill in that. And research allows students to really develop those skills and become experts in them. It also teaches, kind of at a very core level, students to apply their classroom knowledge in a really real world setting. You're learning something in the classroom, and while it can be very academic, the ability to take that and apply it in a really hands-on way, using research, is a really important skill. It allows you to kind of elevate your level of understanding of the material. It also teaches students to ask deeper questions, not be satisfied with kind of the status quo. What we mean by that is that research is all about, as I said, pursuing new knowledge, and not just being kind of satisfied with what already is. Students who perform research typically are looking to take that next step and learn a little bit more, and learn beyond the confines of the classroom. And then, as you've kind of alluded to, research also helps students see connections between different fields of study or topics, again, in a real world setting. Excuse me. What we mean by this is that research is very collaborative. Even if you are doing research on your own, you're going to be still learning from other different people or pulling research or conclusions from other people's research. And so if you're able to do that at the undergraduate level, you're going to be able to see those connections between different fields of study or real world topics. The world is becoming increasingly more interconnected. Kind of the lines or barriers between different fields, either in academia or in the real world, have really begun to kind of erode, which means that individuals who can see those connections and can form connections easily are going to be very successful after they graduate. And I believe I'm going to turn it over to Katie to talk about the qualities of a student researcher and how students can prepare for research in high school.
Thanks, Ford. So I think you'll find a lot of my points were already kind of touched upon by Ford. So in thinking of what a strong student researcher might look like, there's not really one set definition. And certainly this list is not all of the different points that a student might hit. These are kind of the higher level ones that really came to mind when I thought about what a student researcher might look like. So I would think naturally curiosity, right? So you're asking questions about how and why things work the way they do. Is there a way that you could change things? Is there a way that you can make things better or improve upon the way that things already are? So kind of challenging that status quo, as Ford had mentioned. A student who's interested in the details, but able to see the high level picture overall when thinking about their research and what their interests might be. A quick thinker, so a student who has the ability to think on their feet, think in the moment. If you think about yourself and maybe some research experience that you might have or you might be thinking of, imagine how you might pivot or change course when things don't go according to plan. So really being able to think quickly and adjust is a key component of being a really great student researcher. Commitment. So good research and results do not happen overnight. You might have a hypothesis that you think is pretty solid and you go and test it and find out that it's completely the opposite. So a student who is committed to finding a strong end result, but is willing to take the time and dedication to reach that ultimate goal. Strong written and verbal communication skills, right? So the ultimate goal is to have your research published or to share it in an open forum in a way that will kind of further your future goals, be that employment or moving on to a master's or PhD program. So you should be able to present and share your results clearly for all the different audiences that you might come into contact with. And certainly last but not least, independent but also collaborative. So your faculty and professors that you're going to be working with will trust that you're able to conduct research independently. You'll likely have some times where you'll meet with them and prepare, but you will have a lot of independence in terms of your ability to conduct research and find your findings. But you also should expect to have those periodic check-ins to discuss your results or to ask questions. You may also be collaborating with peers. So it's essential that you are open to that collaboration, but also able to take feedback. Being able to sort of pivot and find a new vantage point from a professor or from a peer will make you even more of a strong student researcher. And just some tips, give equal weight to your non-STEM courses. I know many of you might be in a curricula that is a little bit more restricted, but take the time to really focus outside of your science and math-based courses. As Ford had said, research is not just happening in the STEM fields, it's happening in social sciences and humanities. Being successful in these non-STEM courses is just as important. These courses are often where you're going to engage your critical thinking and really hone your writing skills. And those are two key components if you're going to be conducting research on a US university campus. Time management is also important. So as Ford had said before, research often occurs outside of the classroom. So you need to be able to balance time in the classroom with maybe leadership or social activities that you might be participating in. And US universities are hoping that students are going to be strongly balanced in both academics and being a student who contributes to their campus community. So things you can start doing now, start building out a calendar, balance out any time commitments that you have for family or for any kind of clubs or organizations that you might have at your school that you're involved in, and balance that with your academics and see how you can really manage your time and how much time is involved with your out of classroom studies. and how you could balance those right now as a way to kind of train yourself for that higher education experience. And then importantly, set goals and work towards achieving them. I know it seems obvious, but often we don't kind of set achievable goals or set goals that we work towards and then see, how did I meet these goals? And if I didn't meet them, how did I handle that sort of pivoting or adjustment to what my end result was? Building that accountability and that resiliency and the ability to sort of reflect upon what you've learned will be crucial as you're conducting research on a US campus.
All right. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you so much, Ford. Moving on, I'd like to invite Ford again to talk about how students can make the most of undergraduate research opportunities at Johns Hopkins.
Thank you. So yes, so I kind of want to provide a brief overview of Hopkins and then talk a bit about what research looks like on our campus and how students really take advantage of that. Just kind of a brief summary. Johns Hopkins University, first of all, is located in Baltimore, Maryland. It is on the East Coast of the United States. We're about an hour north of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We're about 3 hours south of another major U.S. city, New York City. And Baltimore itself is about a mid-sized city. We are a port city. It's a very diverse and many different senses of the word city internationally, racially, demographically, and our students are really engaged in what Baltimore is. Hopkins was founded as the nation's first research institution, and so research has really been a cornerstone of our academic philosophy since we were founded in 1876. And we do have many different campuses. Some of you may be familiar with, for example, our medical school or our School of Public Health, which have both been in the news a lot over the last 2 years, for good reasons. And we also have other graduate campuses, but I'm really focusing on Homewood, which is our undergraduate campus. And the next slide actually has a bunch of really great pictures of what Homewood really looks like throughout the year. Our Homewood campus is rather small. It's about 150 acres, which means you can walk from one end to the other in about 15 minutes. It feels like its own community. It feels like kind of its own home. And that allows students to really feel like they're part of a community the second they step foot on campus during their freshman year. Students live on campus their first 2 years. Our juniors and seniors live within 3 blocks of campus during that period of time. So they're never far from kind of our home, so to speak. And students are really engaged in the full learning process, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Putting aside research for just a second, because I'm going to cover that in just a moment. We are also a liberal arts school, which for us really means academic flexibility and freedom. So we have 54 majors and 47 minors, and students can pursue any number of those, any combination of those. Some of our more popular ones include public health, neuroscience, international studies, writing seminars, and mechanical engineering, just to name a few, as well as biomedical engineering, which is one of our top programs. And students are able to take classes in those majors, but also outside of them as well. Kind of like Katie and I talked about a moment ago, taking classes in non-STEM areas and pursuing those different fields really helps students become well-rounded. It helps them see those connections that are going to be vital when they're pursuing research. And so at Hopkins, our students are taking classes in different areas. And so while, of course, their majors can be in non-STEM fields, they're still going to be taking classes in different areas to, again, really begin that process of thinking beyond just their individual classroom. But I do want to spend a little bit of time just talking about research, which I think is on the next slide, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So as I mentioned before, we are the nation's first research institution. Research really is a cornerstone of the academic experience here at Hopkins. It defines a lot of how our students pursue their classes and how they pursue their studies. We also receive about $2.5 billion a year for research funding. That really helps our undergraduate students have access to research opportunities, to research funding, facilities like the one you're seeing here in our undergraduate teaching labs, both on and off campus over the course of their 4 years. About 80% of our students, by the time they graduate, have done at least one research experience. Our students are also engaged in other hands-on or pre-professional experiences. You can see kind of on this infographic, about 85% of our students will have done an internship with a company organization by the time they graduate. About a third of our students will take a semester abroad, which means about 98% of our students are engaged in that hands-on learning process. And that kind of is what we define more broadly as research here at Hopkins when we talk about that research culture and those research opportunities. There are no restrictions at Hopkins to do research because you're not an upperclassman. You do not have to have previous research experience to be able to pursue research here as a first-year student. There are no restrictions there because we understand that students have had different experiences, come from different parts of the world, but we don't want that to limit the kinds of opportunities they're able to have here. So that's why all students have a first-year advisor who can help them identify research or internship experiences they want to pursue. Students will frequently email one of their professors and ask about research opportunities, either in or with that professor's lab or in that department in general. Many of our professors are both teaching and doing research, and so they're able to provide additional opportunities for students. We also do have an office, though, that kind of helps students find these opportunities. We call it OUR, H-O-U-R. It's the Hopkins Office of Undergraduate Research. That really is a catch-all for all the undergraduate research opportunities that we have here at Hopkins. Students can set up appointments with them to find opportunities. And again, those can start your freshman year. You don't have to wait. You don't have to have declared a major or take a certain number of courses to pursue that at Hopkins. We really want to embrace that concept of freedom and flexibility for those research experiences. There are, of course, many other things that make Hopkins great. Our student life, the city of Baltimore. I know a lot of you here are focused on research, though, so I'm going to keep that focus on research. We are going to move on to talk a bit about just the application process, just so you all are kind of aware how that works here at Hopkins. So at Johns Hopkins, we have 3 different decision options for students. Our early options are early decision 1, which is due on November 2nd. And those decisions come out in mid-December. We also have early decision 2, which is pretty much exactly the same. That is due on January 4th, and those decisions are released in mid-February. Both our early decision rounds are binding, which means if you apply for early decision and you are admitted, you have committed to attending Hopkins in the fall. Excuse me. It's a great option if you have done your homework. We are a match for you in every single sense of that term, academically, socially, financially. You've kind of thought about what it'll mean to be able to go home or not go home as often. If all of those things line up for you, we definitely encourage students to consider early decision as an option. It is when we have the most spots in the freshman class available. That being said, our other option, which is the most popular, is regular decision. This is when the vast majority of our applicants apply. That is also due on January 4th. Those decisions come out in mid-March, and that is non-binding, which means if you apply regular decision and are admitted, you are not committing to attending Hopkins. You'll have about 6 weeks to decide if you want to enroll in the fall. It's a great option if you need to compare financial aid offers, for example. It's a great option if you're not 100% sure if we're the right fit for you. Maybe you haven't been able to visit campus, and that's really going to seal the deal for you. We totally understand. Again, we don't want you to apply early decision if you're not 100% sure. So we would recommend a regular decision in that regard and in place of early decision. We do take a holistic approach to applications. So we're going to look at all the different components of your application, your transcripts, the actual application itself, for example, the Common Application or the Coalition for College application. We ask for 2 teacher letters of recommendation, as well as one from your counselor. We also require a supplemental essay, which is specific to Johns Hopkins. It asks students to reflect on an aspect of their identity, their background, or an experience they had, and how it is shaped what they want out of the college experience, specifically at Hopkins. It just allows you to tell us a little bit more about yourself. We are also, for students who are applying this year to enter in the fall of 2022, continuing a test optional policy, which means you are not required to submit an ACT or SAT score in order to be considered for admission. If you don't submit them, you are not penalized in any way. We know that that's been really difficult for many students or maybe even impossible, to take one of the tests or get a score that you feel is an accurate reflection of your academic strengths. So again, we are optional when it comes to the SAT or ACT for students who are applying this year to begin at Hopkins in the fall of 2022. It's not on the slide, but I just want to plug that we do not require an English language proficiency exam at Hopkins to be considered for admission. We recommend one if English is not your primary language or your primary language of instruction has not been English for the last 3 years. If you don't fall into one of these two categories, an English language exam is recommended, but again, it's not required. We accept TOEFL, IELTS, the Duolingo English test. We're looking at a few others to kind of continue accepting, but again, those aren't required for admission at Hopkins if that's something that you're worried about or thinking about. Excuse me, but we really do embrace that concept of the whole student. And again, as I mentioned before, you do not have to have previous research experience to do research here or even be considered for admission. Many of the students that we admit who are members of our freshman class do not have previous research experience. That is not a negative mark against you in any capacity. We really just want students to be themselves and showcase who they are. And that allows us to really build a great class of scholars and learners and, of course, future researchers. But that's all I have about Hopkins. I'll drop just 2 useful links in the chat for anybody who's curious to learn more. But then I believe I'm handing it off to Katie to talk about Wisconsin-Madison.
Thank you. Yeah, so again, happy to be here and highlight the University of Wisconsin-Madison. This is one of my favorite pictures of campus. We are a very unique campus. We are about 900 plus acres. We are located on an isthmus between 2 lakes in the state capital of Wisconsin. So actually in the picture there, you can't quite see it very well, but we have a street that connects our campus to the state capital. We are ranked 26th university in the world. We have over 125 different majors that students can choose from. Some of our more popular majors include a variety of fields in business and in engineering. We have a really great undergraduate genetics program that students can start doing research in as early as their first day on campus. And we have students that come to study more liberal arts focused majors, including psychology, sociology, and we have a really great College of Education. We are located about 2 hours north of Chicago, Illinois. So we are kind of more upper Midwest, Great Lakes region of the United States. The city of Madison itself has about 250,000 people, so it's a fairly comfortably sized city. And our campus has 30,000 undergraduate students, so quite a large student body. If you're nervous about having a larger campus, there are ways that we do have to make it smaller, including living learning communities where you'll live in a residence hall and live on the floor with students who are interested in the same academic area of study as you. We have more core focused groups, including the studio, which has a focus on fine and performing arts. We have startup, which is for students that are interested in a more entrepreneurial experience, maybe developing an app or creating a business. And then we have one that focuses on women in science and engineering. As you can see here, I also wanted to include that we spend more than $1 billion annually in research. So we get lots of federal funding from our state government, as well as a variety of private companies to conduct research on our campus. So next slide, please. All right, so Madison, Wisconsin, like I mentioned, is the state capital of Wisconsin. The university is the flagship institution. We are the oldest and largest institution in the state. So there are 13 other campuses that students can attend, but we are the first one that was created in the state of Wisconsin. I wanted to include a lot of beautiful pictures here so you could get a sense of what the campus and the classroom setting is like. We are a 4-season state, so winter is one that you will get to experience. You'll get to do a lot of really fun things, including skiing. We have a snowball fight on campus where our chancellor participates with students. And so you get to connect with your peers, but also students from around the world. So we have students from 120 different countries that come to UW-Madison, again, for a variety of different academic majors. You'll see in the center photo there, that's our state capitol in the background. Having such a unique location lends itself well to research outside of the STEM fields, because we have a lot of students that are doing research and focus on political science because they have that access right there, as well as educational policy and influencing how education is provided in their home country or in the United States. In terms of classroom size there, we have an average classroom size of 17 students to 1 professor. So given the size of our institution, you still do have quite easy access to professors, and they do have mandatory office hours where you can actually go and speak with them and learn about research that they're conducting. And that's a great time to express an interest in perhaps jumping onto their project. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, you can start research on our campus as early as your first year. I wanted to highlight this really unique program that we have called the Undergraduate Research Scholars Program. It is unique because this is a high impact program where you can combine STEM-based research with creative practices. So again, it's not solely focused on STEM, but you can also focus on the intersection of science and math with arts or with performing arts, and you'll learn a lot from your peer students who are conducting this research alongside of you. It's also a unique program because it is mentorship based. So you will actually be matched with either a UW faculty or staff member to conduct a year-long research and creative practice program or project. And you will also be paired then with 2 fellows who are upper level students with experience in research. So it's a great way for you to build a social network, but also a collaborative network focused on research that you are interested in conducting and being impactful to our campus community. You will attend weekly seminars, so you'll register for a very specific course to receive academic credit for your research. It'll be small and it will focus on a variety of different topics, including the implications of research in the world. If you're conducting research that involves humans, there are some things that you need to learn and be aware of around that, and you will cover that in this course as well. But the idea of this class is to keep furthering those critical thinking, writing, and presentation skills, because at the end, you are required to present at our annual undergraduate symposium. So I included a picture here of students who were presenting their work to community members, faculty, staff, and a few sample pieces that students were conducting. So you can see we have a lot of students who are focusing on virtual learning and wellness, which I think is something that is very applicable to the world that we are in right now. Machine learning methods to predict air quality impact of wildfires in Northern California. So a combination of STEM and environmental sciences there, focusing on how students can sort of make the world a better place, and how the COVID-19 vaccine is being focused on in social media. So combining an interest in social media communications alongside science. One thing that I'd like to highlight too is that our university is founded on a theory called the Wisconsin idea. And what that means is we hope that our students will come in, learn and research and gain a ton of skills in the classroom, but then take what they've learned and apply it to the wider world. So take it outside of the 4 walls that you are sort of been studying in. And so our research is sort of core to that, right? You're going to be conducting research that you will hopefully be able to put into practice as you move out of your experience in UW-Madison into an alumni or a master's or PhD program. Next slide, please. So in terms of applying to UW-Madison, similarly to Hopkins, we also do holistic application review. So we don't have any sort of formulas that we calculate in order to determine a student's admissibility, but we look at the student as a whole and their academic and kind of social aspects in applying to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We do require an online application with a fee. In that you would include your course and grade information. We do use the Common Application, and you can self-report your courses on the Common Application at that time. As I mentioned, because we are part of a larger UW system, if you're applying as a transfer student and you've been previously enrolled at another institution, you would use our UW system application. And at that time, you'll need to include your official transcripts from all of the schools that you attended, so high school through your current institution. If you're in a system such as the Indian National Curriculum that has external boards, or in this case, did not have external boards this year, we do require those external results. So we are being flexible with students at this time who are unable to sit for boards. We understand all of the circumstances going on there and have been actively working with students who are coming in this next year. We require 2 essays. One is the Common Application, so it's an essay of your choice. And the second is a supplemental that's specific to UW-Madison. So We want to know why you chose to apply to our institution, how you see yourself fitting in on our campus, what are your academic and social goals. So kind of getting a sense of who you are holistically, because we do not conduct interviews as part of our admissions process. ACT or SAT scores are optional through spring 2023. So an important research project that's ongoing on our campus is our office is actually partnering with our STAR Education Lab to do a review on ACT and SAT scores, because we do find that they are a barrier not only for international, but a lot of US citizens as well. We ask for your extracurricular leadership and employment history. So don't feel like you need to be involved in 100 different activities. We're really looking to see quality involvement versus quantity. One letter of recommendation from an academic source. So that could be a professor, one of your college counselors. We ask for just 2 letters of recommendation maximum. And then we do ask for English proficiency. It is required. We typically will waive this for students applying from India, because we are aware that English is one of the primary language of instruction in most of your schools. But if not, we do ask for the DET, the Duolingo, the IELTS, or the TOEFL. So again, if you are attending a school where English is primary language of instruction, we automatically will waive that requirement. And then just a note about our deadlines, we do early action, which is non-binding, and the deadline for that is November 1st. We find that students are split in applying for both early action and regular decision. But our regular decision deadline is February 1st. So if you apply regular decision, you'll get your decision, your admission decision, typically by the end of March. I do caution students that are interested in applying for our scholarships, because most of those have a February 1st deadline as well. So that goes back to that time management piece. The earlier that you apply, then you can turn and focus on scholarships if that's something that's important to you and your family. I think that is it for Wisconsin.
All right, thank you so much, Ford. Thank you so much, Katie. And I think the students will definitely gain from a lot from this, and there is some useful information, some very useful information that you've shared. So thank you so much. And we now have a special edition for this session, and we have a student alumnus story. So today we also have with us Shiva. Shiva is a postdoctoral fellow doing research in biophysical chemistry. He grew up in New Delhi and attended Springdale School, after which he went to Oberlin College, and he's going to share his experience through that. He went to pursue an undergraduate degree in biochemistry. He then went to MIT to pursue his doctoral degree in chemical biology. Now he's doing research at Rockefeller University before beginning the process of applying for a faculty position. We welcome you, Shiva. Thank you so much for joining us today. And over to you now. Please help us. Please share your experience, how it all benefited you. What were your experiences as an undergraduate research?
Yeah, thank you. Can you go to the next slide and then I can start? Yeah, so this is, I guess, just an overview of what Meg already introduced. But through school, so I went to Springdale School, Dholakwa in New Delhi. I did science with biology. And then I went to Oberlin College, which is in Ohio, to do my bachelor's of arts, in this case in biochemistry. And then I did my PhD in chemical biology at MIT. I just finished last year. And then now I'm a postdoctoral fellow in the McKinnon lab at Rockefeller University. I mean, there's a lot of words here, but the main thing that I want to say here is that I basically have done research in like biology, chemistry, physical chemistry, a few different fields. So you're not limited in any sense when you join a college in what field you do. So can you go to the next slide, please? So I'll just talk a little bit about like my path in high school. And so the first thing, I mean, for me, my main interest growing up was that science is really cool. I wasn't particularly leaning towards, I didn't know what I wanted to do, right, when I was in high school. And for me, the interesting thing was that there's a lot we don't understand about this world. And so I wanted to learn more. And in particular, in high school, at least, I was more interested in biology and computer science. And there's actually this project from Stanford University called Folding at Home, which works on this big unknown problem of protein folding at the time, which I was very interested. That's what got me interested in this problem. And so I was really interested in working on protein folding in school. I was just curious. And so in high school, first, I wasn't really thinking about applying to the US in the first place. I also did not want to do engineering. I knew I wanted to study science. So I was looking for colleges in India mainly. But then my brother at the time went to USIEF to apply for a master's program. And so the USIEF counselor was very helpful, suggested that I also apply to college to the US. And so I began the application process. Of course, you can get help from USIEF. They know all about the application process. But I guess the one thing that I will say that I didn't know at the time was that, and which Ford and Katie already mentioned, is that one really important thing is that there needs to be a good fit between the college and the student, right? So you need to be clear about why you're applying to this particular college or this particular university, right? You can't just, I mean, in India, we have like this perception that, okay, maybe it's perceived as being prestigious, but that's not the reason why you should be applying to a particular school, right? So you want to describe why you'd fit right into that college. And of course, grades are, as Katie and Ford already said, grades are not the whole story, right? So they'll really look for a holistic students, I guess, in general. The other thing that I wanted to point out, which again was also mentioned by Ford and Katie, is that different institutions have different amount of financial aid available for international students. So if that's something you're worried about, as I was when I was applying, you want to do a little bit of research to see what schools offer financial aid. In general, financial aid is limited for international students. That's because US government funding in general cannot be, I think, used to provide scholarships for international students. So that's just something you want to be aware of when you're applying. And financial aid does, at most institutions, does affect, if you're asking for financial aid, that does have an impact on how your application is reviewed, in the sense that if you need financial aid and they cannot provide it, then that's a problem, right? The other thing that I want to mention, which I didn't know, again, this is something that I didn't know, is the difference between liberal arts colleges versus research universities. So, Oberlin College is a small liberal arts school. So it has a population of 3,000 students across all 4 years. And we don't have any graduate students, right? So that's the main difference. So, no graduate students, no postdocs, it's just undergraduate students. And versus at a big research institution, you have undergraduate students often in the tens of thousands. And then on top of that, you have grad students, etc. So just know the pros and cons of both, like liberal arts colleges and research universities, both have pros and cons. So look at this and try to figure out what would be a better fit for you before you apply. Okay, next slide, please. Right, so then when I went to Oberlin as a freshman, I mentioned before that I was interested in biology. So I registered for the biology department, but in the second year I shifted to biochemistry or chemistry department because of, I realized I was more interested in that. So this is one thing, I mean, it doesn't matter what, I think this is already mentioned by Katie and Ford, but it doesn't matter what major you join or what major you're interested in. You can just switch your major. Usually you don't have to report your major by the end until the end of second year. And even if so, you can switch. I also took plenty of non-science classes. As both Ford and Katie said already, this really helped me with writing proficiency. I was also interested in these classes. Of course, it gives you a wider, worldview, but I'm very interested in STEM in general. And so actually, yeah, I should say that what I'm going to be talking about is mostly for STEM, but everything is also applicable to non-STEM fields. But anyway, so yeah, so especially at Oberlin, I took plenty, at liberal arts colleges, you're required to take plenty of non-science classes, and these are very helpful. So you don't want to limit yourself to just science, right? And I guess for me, the main interest in doing research initially was because, I mean, in the first year, the class material is a little repetitive, honestly. If you're doing high school in India, you've already covered most of the introductory science material actually in high school. So you do have in the first year, it makes it easier because then you have to move to a new country and you have to adjust, right? So having strong science training from India, it gives you a little bit more headroom when you first join, because in the US, the education system is kind of different. So you have to adjust to that. Time management skills, all this stuff, right? Writing, being regular with homework, all these things are very important, but you can adjust to that in your first year. And then I started doing research in a biology lab at the end of my freshman year. I later switched to a chemistry lab. Again, the point here is that it's very flexible. So you can join, you want to join whatever you're interested in, right? Because you want to be doing something you are interested in. You don't do something just for getting a check mark, right? It's because you're passionate about it, because you're interested in it. And so that's, I think, the most important thing. And then for applying to grad school after college, you usually know what field specifically you want to apply for. This is at least for STEM, this is how it works. And so you apply to different universities based on your specific research interest in certain professors. And for this, the common recommendation is that you apply to a school with where you have at least 2 professors whose work is interesting, just in case it doesn't work out and you can't join the lab of one, right? But otherwise, it's a very similar strategy to college. You identify some schools. Again, fit is important, right? Fit in this case would be not so much for the college, but more specifically for the specific professor you want to work with. The other thing is science PhDs are fully funded, so you don't have to worry about that if you want to pursue PhD. And for grad school, what's important, I think the primary thing is recommendations from your college professors, right? So that's the primary metric for admission. Also statement of purpose and research experience. And you just need to have reasonable grades. I don't think grades matter, especially in stuff like the subject, GRE or whatever. It really doesn't matter. I don't think universities really care about that. Okay, next slide, please. And then finally, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some common positions that I've seen people go to after doing research. I should say this is for STEM fields only. So sorry I don't know much about non-STEM research, so I shouldn't talk about that. But after college, a lot of people end up going to graduate school. So either getting a master's or a PhD. You can also join just a company, right? Whether that's technology, engineering, pharmaceutical, biotech, for example. People also do research, find it helpful. People doing research also find it helpful for then applying to medical school or related occupations later on. I know people who work as research technicians or lab managers in STEM labs right after college, and then you can also apply to be like a school teacher. That's also pretty common. But then after graduate school, you can then think about pursuing professor position or lecturer position. Typically, you have to do a postdoc after the PhD before applying for these positions. You can still join the same firms, whatever firms. After PhD, especially, actually, a lot of consulting firms, data analytics firms, investment banking firms will also hire STEM PhDs because you have quantitative training. That's what they're looking for. So that's another pretty common career path. And then lastly, you can also pursue options in science policy. So that's more related to the government. And I think that's all I have. So we can move on to the next session, the questions part. I'll hand it over to you, Megha. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shiva. That was really helpful. So before we begin with the Q&A, I just want to highlight that the upcoming session that we have is Wonders of the US Graduate Studies, which is going to happen on June 30th. Feel free to join in. This is primarily for graduate students. You can feel free to share it among your contacts as well. And these are our contact information. You can take a screenshot and let us know if you have any questions regarding this. And you can start typing your questions if you have any in the chat box. With that, we now move to the Q&A section, which is primarily, I'm looking at the questions that are available. So are undergraduate students allowed to conduct research outside of their chosen major or school? Katie, would you like to take that up?
Sure. Yeah, I think it kind of depends on the institution. So some institutions in the US will admit students directly to a specific major or program, and others will generally admit students to the university overall. So it could be a stipulation with the specific admission into a major or department that you conduct research within that major or department. I think what you'll find with the US is that you need to be flexible because as you said, we have 4,700 different universities and colleges across the United States, and no two operate the same way. So there would be an option for you to conduct research both inside and outside of your major. Whether or not is a binding commitment would be up to that specific department that you may have been admitted to.
That makes sense. Ford, would you like to add to it?
Katie kind of covered it. It definitely depends on the school, but so everything Katie said is I think, a comprehensive answer.
All right, great. Though you all, both of you, and even Shiva has also mentioned that you can start undergraduate research as soon as you enter the first year. But I just want that. But there is one more question about: are there any minimum course credit requirements to pursue research? Yeah, go ahead.
So similar to the earlier question, this will depend largely on the schools that you are enrolling in. I think Katie and I both addressed any specific requirements or lack of requirements in terms of students being able to do research at our schools, but it will just vary school to school. Some may require, depending on what field or major you're doing research in, you take a specific course or two to kind of prep you. Some schools may have a course that is designed to introduce students to how to do research. Some schools might not have one. So it will be largely a school to school, not issue, but a school to school kind of variable if you need to take any prerequisite courses to be able to pursue research there.
All right. There is one question for Shiva. Shiva, there's a parent who was asked this question. My kid does not have biology in high school because their system does not permit it. So yet he can pursue biochemistry or biotech in undergrad. He has gland chemistry and CS that she mentioned. I'm not sure if that means computer science or.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think for liberal arts colleges, at least, I think they're very flexible. So yes, I think you can do basically whatever you want to do. But as I guess Katie and Ford know more about this than I do, but for some universities, then you have specific requirements and maybe you're admitted to a specific department. But I guess my sense would be that that should not be a problem, at least for most universities. But maybe Katie and Ford, you have something to add to that.
Yeah, I think if it's a limitation that was put on because of the school not being able to offer the course, or there's some kind of extenuating circumstances, we would definitely take that into consideration. I think most institutions would. And so that's when we would encourage your child's college counselor to include that either as part of the school profile or sending us an email to include that information in the application, just so that we understand the context of why certain courses may or may not have been offered.
Yeah. There's one more question. If a student has been able to get research opportunities at high school with a professor at an overseas university, not specifically in the US, so does that give an edge to the applicant over the others? This question is, I think, primarily for Ford and Katie. So Ford, why don't you take it, and then probably Katie can add to it.
Sure. So how I frame this is it doesn't necessarily give students like an edge on its own. It's more about kind of the whole context of the application. We're also not comparing students, like I'm not comparing a student at this school to a student at the same school, or even students at different schools, from India or, in my case, Canada, because that's where I primarily read. it's all about a very individual review. And so while doing research can definitely be great, we really want to see what the student has learned from that experience. So they do research just because it was going to sound impressive, kind of what we were talking about before about making sure you're not going to school just for prestige. Are you doing things like a research and activity because it's going to look good or because you actually have an interest in it? We'd much rather see a student pursue something like research if they're able to do so, A, because they have an interest in it, and then be able to demonstrate in some capacity in the application why that was beneficial. We talked about the skills you learned from it, the skills that make a successful researcher. If a student can reflect on that, that is really beneficial in the application beyond just research on its own. We really want to kind of see the student's own conclusions about that and how it's really benefited them.
Katie, would you like to add something to?
No, I think those are all of the big points. We would definitely be of that same mindset. And I think that's pretty common as we see students applying to our institutions from a variety of different backgrounds and countries.
Correct. I know that you have already mentioned this, but there is a similar question. How do we get these research opportunities in the university? Katie, you can tell us how students can actually locate these research opportunities available at the campus.
Yeah, sure. So again, depending on the institution, some like Wisconsin have a very dedicated or focused research component or research program that students can participate in. I would recommend that you look and see if maybe there's an honors program that involves a research component. Those are fairly common kind of across the United States. But really, I think Ford kind of touched on this too. A lot of it is just taking the initiative to meet with your professor. I really think that office hours are one of the most underutilized resources on university campuses because you're in a room with a professor and he's teaching you all the same topic, but not really gauging whether or not you're either really interested in it or you're understanding the topic. So taking the time to meet with your professor during office hours and expressing that interest and asking for a mentorship opportunity, asking for some research experience is really the best way. I think, looking at a US university, it's all about kind of self-initiative. So taking it upon yourself to really build some of those connections will be most beneficial in terms of looking at research opportunities kind of overall.
I think that makes more sense. There is this question. Are there any summer internship opportunities available in undergraduate research area? Ford, would you like to take that up?
Sure. So for current students at many of our schools, we do offer summer programs, internships, research experiences, some kind of combination. How many those are offered, as well as any funding for those, will vary school to school and even within the school, program to program. For current high school or secondary school students, because I've got a few direct message questions about this as well, that will vary school to school. At Hopkins, for example, we have suspended most, if not all, of our visiting student or research experiences for high schoolers due to COVID. We have, tried to shift as many of those as possible to a virtual space. A lot of those are harder just because of resources and what it look like student to student. Excuse me. So if you're interested at the university level, definitely the same way you kind of find the opportunities to do research or internships during the year, meeting with your professor, going to a specialized office, are generally the same ways you'll find those same opportunities for the summer. If you're in high school, it's going to be school to school, and I would just encourage students to explore school's website, look for keywords like visiting student or high school student. When looking for opportunities, those are generally keywords to let you know what opportunities there might be for you if that's where you are in this stage of your journey.
That totally makes sense. Yes. I think this question is for Shiva. How much time commitment is required in undergraduate research?
I think time commitment. I mean, in the semester, I would say it's a little harder to do research because you're busy with classes. People do sign up for research credit, but it's maybe you can do 5-10 hours a week, right? Something like that, I would say. Maybe more if you're doing like some sort of honors research project or something like that. But during the summer and during, if your school has a winter term, like say month of January, that's actually when I think a good amount of, because then you're basically, you can work, you have the whole day to work on research, right? So that's when a lot of research gets done really fast, at least at a place like Oberlin, where it's just undergraduate researchers working directly with professors. That's when people have the most time. So summer and winter term are like you're working full time, right, doing research. In the semester, if you're also taking classes, it's a little harder, but you do what you can do.
Right. So there's one more question. Are there any opportunities to publish and or present at professional conferences as an undergraduate?
Yeah, I think especially in liberal arts colleges, I mean, all the research is done by undergraduates, right? So, I mean, it's not uncommon for people to, it's quite common for people to graduate at least STEM fields with, I don't know, maybe at least say one publication, 0 to 2 publications after college. Whether that's, usually for undergrads, it's more of like a contribution. So maybe you're not the first author, but maybe you're a contributing author on a paper. As for attending professional, like I guess symposiums or whatever, conferences, I think there are undergraduate, in general, a lot of colleges will have undergraduate focused research symposiums. I think Katie mentioned that's something that happens at UW, at Wisconsin. And that's also true at Oberlin, for example. But in addition to that, that really depends on the professor and how much time they're willing to spend with the student. And that's something that you might, if you might want to consider when you're choosing a professor, is look at their publication history, see if they've published with students in the last 5 years, right? And that'll give you a sense of whether that particular professor has published with, other college students, right? Recent alumni. That's the best way to know, because that really depends from professor to professor, and from, of course, university to university. But basically, just look at what the professor has done, and same for conferences. It has happened. Like I have gone to a conference in undergrad, but I think conferences are less common for undergrads. Like external conferences are less common compared to publications, in my experience.
All right. I think that's fair to know, and I think that makes more sense. It's not a research related. It's not a research related question, but it's a question that is for universities. Can we get into US colleges if we do not have huge amount of extracurricular and or social work in our profile? Katie, would you like to answer that?
Sure. I absolutely. I think those of us that work in international especially understand that extracurriculars are often a very American type of thing. So we see a wide range of students who apply from private or international schools that have easy access to extracurriculars and kind of social out of the classroom experiences. And we have students that come in and just don't have access to that. And as Ford said, we do not compare those students to each other. We really look at students within their individual school groups. We look to see what is available to students and why they may or may not be choosing to engage, as well as if they kind of share anything in the essays that would let us know. Often students don't fill out the activity section, but they might mention something in their essay. And so we could glean additional information from there. So we wouldn't necessarily penalize a student. I think we're very aware of the cultural differences in extracurriculars and take that into consideration when we are reviewing an application.
Okay, so um, there is one question about research work at school level. So can the person is trying to refer it to high school maybe, and where do they need to register it, and how can they publish it, or where do they publish the research? I think Shiva, would you like to answer that question, given that you have Indian high school experience?
I think maybe Ford and Katie have more ideas about this, because I think in India it's really not common. I definitely do not have any high school research experience. I know in the US, some people do have research experience, but my understanding is that it's still fairly infrequent. It's still pretty rare for high schoolers to have research experience. You can do it, of course. I mean, I guess the short answer to that is you can just reach out, right? I mean, that's the one takeaway that I guess that Ford and Katie already said. It never hurts to send an email to a professor if you are interested in joining their lab, whether that's in college or high school. If you have an interest in joining this lab, particularly doing research on this thing, you can state why you're interested and just ask if the professor has an opening. If they're busy and they don't want anybody, they won't respond, but that's okay, right? It doesn't hurt to ask. So I guess I would just say you can email professors at local institutions, right? At research institutions, and ask if, of course, don't just bombard people with emails, and people may not respond. So you have to be prepared for that. But if you are really interested, just email and ask. And whether it's office hours or just sending an email or speaking to like an academic advisor in college, just ask.
Katie, Ford, would you like to add something to it? Let's start with Ford, maybe.
Similar to what Siobhan said, I would just say, yeah, definitely kind of reach out. As I kind of mentioned in my intro, because I work primarily with Canadian students, I have slightly less experience when it comes to research at the high school level here in India. But I would just say, yeah, if you don't hesitate, to reach out to professors. That's something that we see pretty commonly in the terms of just hearing about students emailing professors. And there are many professors who will work with high school students. There are many professors who won't. Don't take it personally. It's not a personal thing. It's usually just a bandwidth issue for the professor, or they're focusing on their classes, or they don't have any opportunities, or their lab requires in-person work. But that is generally my recommendation for students who ask me where to find opportunities at the high school level, is to email professors at universities, either in their home country or in other countries as well. They feel there are opportunities to pursue those.
Yeah, I would echo that.
Katie,
and I think
have.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please. Sorry.
I was just going to add to something that we've noticed, or I've noticed from applicants from India in particular, is that if you're initiating an independent research and you've consulted with one of your high school teachers, perhaps within maths, computer sciences, biology, chemistry, and they provide a letter of recommendation that speaks to some of that research that you've been doing or how you've collaborated, that's another way that you can kind of register your interest in terms of maybe not having an official patent or an official publication, but letting us know that you are conducting some of that research while you're a high school student. So that's just another piece where we could get some of that information.
Fair enough. So there's one question. How can undergraduate research help me even if I don't pursue a research track? Katie, would you like to take that up? And we can then have Ford and Shiva talk about it.
Yeah, I think, research in any academic field is going to enhance your critical thinking skills. It's going to make you a strong writer, an academic thinker, encourage you to be creative and kind of expand your comfort zone or your knowledge base. And I think those are skills that you can use professionally, personally, and it could help guide you as you're a college student. You might come in with one very specific idea as to what you want to study and completely change by the time your undergraduate term ends. So I think, research in any academic discipline without having a specialty in it is a great opportunity for students to just grow and expand and become more confident in their abilities as well.
Ford, would you like to add to it?
Sure. I think we covered, Katie just covered a lot. I think I covered some of this on my slide to like, what's the importance of research. But, no matter where you go, also after you graduate, whether that is to a graduate school, whether it's to a job, those skills are going to always be valuable. They're always going to be sought after. And being able to point back to specific experiences you've had will also be helpful in those settings as well. And you're always gonna be able to use those skills. I did research in my undergraduate career and I use those skills in college admissions. It's always going to be useful and beneficial, and it's only going to make you more competitive no matter where you're going. It's only going to benefit you. So we definitely encourage students to pursue those opportunities, even if they're not pursuing a career path or something that is maybe related to traditional research, because it's always going to be beneficial.
And that makes more sense. Yeah. Yes, Shiva. Would you like to add to it?
Yeah, I think it's already covered like the important points, but just to point out that probably about half of, I don't know, in my experience, probably about half of, college graduates who did research or, were in the science departments don't continue with research. And that's also true at the PhD level. So it's quite common for people to not pursue the research track long term. But these skills are always, of course, extremely valuable.
That makes sense. So do we get any academic credit for research is another question. Ford, would you like to add to it?
Sure. So like, unfortunately, like a lot of the answers we've given today will depend. It will depend on the school. It will depend on what kind of research you're doing. Generally, there are a few different avenues students can receive academic credit hours for pursuing research. The number of credits will depend on how the research is structured, what school it's at, how many hours you're putting into that kind of project. There are some opportunities for paid research. These will vary perhaps a bit more depending on the school you're going to and the field you're doing it in, the major you're working under, the department you're in. Those are generally a little more rare for paid research opportunities than opportunities for credit. But there are definitely opportunities. It'll just depend on the school and depend on the program. But largely, if you explore a school's website and they have links to research, you can generally see just some opportunities and see if those are for credit, if they're not for credit, and kind of how that works. And that can help give you an understanding of those specific options at the schools you're looking at.
Katie, there is a specific question for UW-Madison. What is though it is not relevant to undergraduate research, but I'd still like to ask, what is the procedure to calculate GPA at UW-Madison for Indian students?
That is a great question. At UW-Madison, we do not calculate GPAs for any system that does not provide them. So we will look at overall academic trends. So looking at the subjects that you're taking, how you're performing in terms of academics, all the way through 9 through 12. Now I know with Indian students in particular, they get nervous about the internal 11. And so we are aware that that is sometimes a little bit soft, but looking at predicted 12s and kind of having an overall understanding of how you've been performing as a student is what we look at. So if a GPA is not provided by your school, we will not calculate one.
There's one more question on AP exams. Do AP exams benefit you in terms of or give you an edge in terms of pursuing research at an undergraduate level? Ford, would you like to take that up?
Sure. For purposes of research, AP exams don't necessarily provide an edge. We know there are AP seminar, AP research courses that some schools offer that are more research-based, and that can help demonstrate a researcher's mindset to our schools in the admissions process. However, AP exams in and of themselves aren't necessarily giving students an edge when it comes to research because they're much more academic based. in general for the admissions process, I'll just speak for Hopkins. I don't want to speak for anybody else. For AP exams, they don't play a huge role in our admissions process. If you're able to take AP classes, we'd much rather see a grade than an AP exam. But if you're taking an AP exam, either in your school or outside of it, you report the score. We'll definitely look at the score and it will play a role, but it's not going to play a huge role. Usually AP scores primarily play a role in earning credit at Hopkins versus the admissions process or for research purposes.
How about you, Katie? Would you like to add something to it?
Yeah, I think we're very similar. Again, if a student is in a system that does not offer APs, we wouldn't expect them to take those. But certainly if they opt to take them as additional experience or learning for themselves, that's totally fine. But for us, we would look at the AP subjects that you're taking, if they are related to the academic field that you might be interested in, and they will give you a little bit more credit when you come to the institution, as well as then kind of allow you to possibly start at a higher level depending on what your subjects are that you took.
That makes sense. There's one more question. Is it possible to research in a minor subject and not the major that we have taken? Katie, would you like to answer?
That's an interesting question. Generally a minor is much smaller in terms of your academic credits. I think it would depend on the nature of your minor. If it's something interdisciplinary that you combined with your potential academic major, there could be an opportunity for research there. But I have to say that's a question I have not been asked before. I think the safe answer would be it depends, which is the safe answer for a lot of things in the United States. But again, with having 120 credits needed for your degree, there will be room for you to take courses even outside of that minor that could be research-based. So you could have an opportunity to add a research-based course in your minor, but it would just still count towards your overall academic course load and experience.
How about you, Ford?
Pretty similar to Katie, it might depend. We do see a lot of students pursue research outside of their major, and that can be just outside of it in general, in a completely different field, in a related field, in an interdisciplinary setting. It could also be related to a minor they're enrolled in or not related. It will just depend on the student and the opportunities available, but there's generally enough flexibility at Hopkins that if you're going to pursue research, it can be almost any field. We're going to caveat the almost. Now, there's some fields that you can't do research in, but for things like minors or outside of your major, there are definitely going to be opportunities.
All right. So there's, I think, one last question that I have, and I think that Shiva would be, Shiva, you could answer it for us. How many professors should I be contacting at once?
For research, I think, as mentioned before, like you want to apply for research interest based on your interests, right? The reason you're doing this is because you're interested in the specific research that this professor is doing. Like that's the criterion that you want to use. You don't want to just apply. Then, sure, like you can contact multiple professors. I guess in general, maybe only a handful, I would say. If you're doing undergrad research, you can just try emailing once, wait for a few days for them to respond and then email the next one, right? Depends how much of a rush you are, I guess. So, but again, the main point is like apply to professors based on your research interests specifically, rather than, just applying for the heck of it. Maybe Ford and Katie have something to add.
I think that's a great answer, especially kind of that being intentional piece. Don't just email 20, 30, 40 professors just because you can. You should really be intentional with who you're emailing, kind of like applying to college, and touch about who you're emailing and why you're looking for those experiences, and just be patient. It's not going to be, as Katie talked about, that's a quality we look for in researchers is kind of that patience and that follow through. It probably isn't going to be an immediate response. It might take a few days, but definitely, have a list, order them, rank them, email maybe 1 or 2 at a time, maybe 2 or 3, and then kind of work down your list if you're not hearing back or there are opportunities. That'd be my advice, very similar to what you just said.
Okay, I've got this COVID related question. I'm not sure if that is the right question to ask, but I'm still asking. Has COVID impacted research funding for postgraduate students, as in probably for graduate students?
To my knowledge, no. Like, I don't think NIH has changed the funding guidelines that much. So in fact, I think actually science funding increased since COVID. So I don't know. Okay, I don't know. I'm not sure about that, but it definitely hasn't decreased significantly. Like in terms of fellowships being offered, et cetera, everything is still the same.
Katie, would you like to add to it? Katie and Ford, your inputs. So Katie first and then Ford probably.
Sure. I don't have a ton to add since I'm focused on the undergraduate level. But what I can say is I think the challenges that we've been seeing are more so around accessibility to professors and research opportunities, given that students are not always on campuses. And so whether or not they can actually conduct some of that research from their home country and whether or not the university allows that. And so that's something that I think has been a policy that has not been thought of in the before, because we haven't been in this situation previously. So that's something that I think we've noticed from a large public research standpoint.
The exact same answer as Katie. That's really what's been on the forefront of our minds is that accessibility piece, less so funding. Because again, I also focus on the undergraduate school. I know by and large, most funding has remained the same for research, but yeah, it's mostly been an accessibility piece.
Wow.
To add to that, I think like now everything is pretty much back to normal. I don't know in Wisconsin and Johns Hopkins specifically, but most research institutions are now, well, okay, not all of them, but definitely a good chunk of them are back to normal operations. Like I know Rockefeller is, and I'm pretty sure MIT is as well.
All right. So, well, that was the end of our Q&A. I think we don't have any further questions. And I thank you all for sharing some insightful information and some interesting inputs that that definitely is going to benefit the students. And I would also like to thank Deborah and Amita, my colleagues from Education USA, who has been kind enough to help me at the back end to relay questions. So thank you so much, everyone. And with that, we are going to end the session, and I have the contact information for all the centers. For those who were not able to take a screenshot, you can take the screenshot and you can certainly reach out to the center nearest to you. And Katie, Ford, and Shiva, thank you so much once again for being part of the session today. And another thank you to Jenny, who has been kind enough to help us introduce to Ford. So thank you so much. And we hope everyone was able to get the most of the session, get most of the information about undergraduate research opportunities. And for people who joined in during in the mid of the session, you can find the recording on Facebook as well. We have live streamed this session, so you can find the whole recording on Facebook as well. So you can access it anytime. And yeah, that's about it. And thank you so much for joining in. And I'm really glad that we were able to make it a success. Thank you so much.